We'll get started. This is a great crowd, everybody. My name is John Show. I'm with the steering committee of Charlotte Sports Plus Business. In normal times, we're a group of people that meet once a month. In real life, we have morning events at the NASCAR Hall of Fame with speakers, and we have evening events at various breweries around town. All networking events, all done free of charge. Nobody is paying to be members. Nobody's paying to speak. Everybody just kind of does this out of the kindness of their hearts. So given the current situation, we all can't meet at the Hall of Fame or at bars. So we thought this would be a great way just to connect with people, hear from some great minds in our industry, and generally give everybody something to do at 2 o'clock on a Thursday when they're probably looking for something to do. So easily our best crowd. This is the third one of these that we've done. Our largest crowd to date, our most diverse crowd to date in terms of companies, locations, pretty much everything. So I'm going to turn it over to Bespoke Sports and Entertainment CEO, Mike Boykin, to introduce our guests.
And today we're joined by two people that I respect immensely professionally, and I'm also very fortunate to call them friends, and that's Susan O'Malley and Danny Morrison. Both of them now are professors at the University of South Carolina, and I wanted to be sure to support the Gamecocks and the great job they do with their sports and entertainment program in Columbia. I'm sure they'll have a story or two to weave in throughout the day because there's going to be a lot we can talk about that college students in particular got hit with a surprise punch in the late inning here when coronavirus hit. Susan, attorney by trade, but also the first woman to be president of a major sports franchise, and that was the Washington Capitals and Bullets. Just a super successful career, great professor, great sense of humor, and I'm sure she's going to hit me a time or two as we go through this. Danny Morrison, dear friend, former commissioner of the Southern Conference. He's also athletic director, a coach. He was athletic director at TCU. We talked a little bit about that today in the prep meeting. And Danny was also president of the Panthers. He currently is leading the Charlotte Sports Foundation, and I'm sure Danny's going to have some updates, as this is a busy time for them, getting ready for the Kickoff Classic and looking for a bowl sponsor. So Susan and Danny, it's great to have you. Thank you.
Great to be here.
Very nice to be here. I want the audience to know that you are a limited budget, so you clearly get what you pay for. Us. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, but before we dive into the business world and your experiences and what you see happening, everybody's had to adjust. And I know from being around you a little bit both, you've been active. What have you been doing to stay healthy? Describe a day in the life of Susan O'Malley or Danny Morrison so people get an idea of what you're doing to stay healthy.
I read somewhere that we're all going to come out of this either a hunk, a chunk, or a drunk. I don't want to be limited to one, is all I can say. I've been very lucky that I live on the coast, and so I have the ability to be outside, biking and walking. I say it's a triathlon every day. I walk 5 miles, I bike about 10, and then I eat. So it's bike, walk, eat, repeat.
Danny?
Yeah, well, first of all, before I answer that question, I just want to say something to John and you, Mike. It's pretty incredible what y'all have done for young people in Charlotte, especially when you started this program where you meet once a month and you get all the sports people together in Charlotte and all the young people and for breakfast. And that's a gift. And you've always been a giver and given back, and you and your team. And then in what you see in these kind of times is you see people doing innovative things. So you take this same program that you were doing in Charlotte and turn it into a once a week. You had Abe McCord. There's nobody knowledgeable in sports in America than Abe when he was on. And then you having Chris Foy and Rick Jones last week. So this is, again, you just give back, which is great. I've been doing so. I have a friend that you both know well that I walk with every day. And we've got the local problems solved, the state problems, the national problems, and the international problems, but nobody's listening. So it's been good.
What have you done during this downtime that maybe you wouldn't have done if things were normal? If things were as they were? Have you picked up something new, spent more time doing something? You know, what have you noticed as you reflect back that you have enjoyed or encountered in the last 6 to 7 weeks? Susan?
I'd have to say the biggest change for me is I stopped watching television. I'm 3 days into I realized my day would end and I would just start binging something. And I thought, I can't do this for 6 weeks. And without live sports, it's like, what's the point anyway? So I turned the TV off, and I have not turned the TV on in over 6 weeks.
Wow.
So I fill my nights differently, whether it be letter writing or reading or whatever it is, but I don't turn the television on.
I've done a couple of things. We've all zoomed out probably. So, and most of the people that know Susan and me, we go by the code names Melinda Gates for her and Stephen Jobs for me. We're not the most technologically savvy folks, and we have such a talented faculty at South Carolina. They're brilliant on all of those, both technology and research, and we're fortunate to work with such a great faculty there. But we've been having daily Zoom meetings with the Charlotte Sports Foundation. We have a great team that's been working on things. And then I guess personally, we've eaten at home more than in the last 5-6 weeks than we probably have in years. I'm not the greatest grill master anyway, but I'm pretty good on the meat side. Salmon was a disaster. So I've got room for improvement.
That's one where I can help you, and it won't be cheap, but we'll get it covered. Danny, let's talk a little bit as we headed into this slowdown. You were right in the midst of trying to find a replacement for Belk, who'd been with the Belk Bowl and the Belk Kickoff Classic for 9 years. Where were you in the search? How is the search going, and what's been your approach during this time?
Well, first of all, Belk was a great partner for the 9 years. They would say it had a tremendous impact on their business in the positive side. So we've had a great relationship with Belk. We're presently involved with 2 entities that we're talking with. We were, prior to the coronavirus, we were actually close to having a title sponsorship done. Once the coronavirus hit, we've been respectful. We know they have issues that they're dealing with. We've stayed in constant communication. We do believe that what we heard from Rick Jones and Chris Foy last week, the 3rd and 4th quarters could be spectacular for sports. And so if you go back to Depression times, Kellogg, who was number 3 in the cereal wars during the Depression. And what Kellogg did is they actually made a bold move, and risk and progress are usually complementary variables. So here's Kellogg takes this big risk. They're number 3. They double their advertising budget while others are cutting. And they vaulted to number 1, and they've stayed that way for what, 90 years. So that was probably a pretty smart move, an aggressive move. And sometimes in tough times, contrarian and being aggressive is actually a very positive, because you get exponential value out of something. So we're continuing to have dialogue. We've been respectful again of their time. And so we feel like we've got a great situation in the bowl game with ACC, SEC, ACC, SEC, and Big Ten. So that's the three best power conferences in America. And then we've got some really fabulous kickoff games with Notre Dame and Wake Forest this year. And then next year we'll have a weekend that'll be probably the best weekend in all of America with App State and East Carolina playing, followed by Clemson, Georgia. So we're excited about, yeah, I figured you'd go there, but we're real excited about where we are and appreciative of the support we get in Charlotte. I'll say this, we have an amazing board, and we've got a lot of great people like you, Mike, that are co-captains that support us in a big way. And then we have a grassroots group called the Leatherheads, and they're boots on the grounds working on behalf of the foundation. People recognize that what the foundation does is bring quality of events to Charlotte for quality of life, but more importantly, economic value. Over the last 2 years, the economic value of the 3 games that we have each year, if you total it all up, is $175 million. So that's pretty significant. And especially during these times, the people that are getting hurt the most are, well, not the most maybe, but certainly getting hurt: restaurants, hotels, tourism industry, all the ones that we help bring economic development to those areas.
You know, I gotta jump in here. I see, Danny, you've sort of mentioned everybody. You got the Leatherheads coverage. You thank Mike. I only have one person watching that I care about. Dr. Brown, how you doing out there? Chair of my department. Really like my schedule. Good to see you on screen. Very, very talented chair. Runs one of the largest departments at University of South Carolina. Brought us through this online process. Steve Jobs and Melinda Gates, appreciate you.
Amen.
Wow. Lassus, is that what Tony Kornheiser called you when you were the president?
Yes. Yeah, he called the team the Les Boulets, and I was the president, Lassus.
Lassus.
That's my Twitter, Lassus.
Speaking of NHL and NBA, you've sat in that seat. What are those people going through right now? From an NHL perspective, from an NBA, if you're team president, you know, season stopped right in the middle, right on the verge of the playoffs. Give me what you think they're going through on a daily basis.
You know, they go through, it's in a roller coaster of emotion. Danny talked about how he was really close to a title sponsor, and then coronavirus happened. You know, we have this player that played for the Wizard. His name was Michael Jordan. I'm not sure if the 150 people are familiar with him. Very talented player, maybe one of the greatest of all time. Has a little movie out right now. Anyway, he decided that he was going to come back and play for the Wizards. And the news leaked on September 10th during Monday Night Football. And there was a crawl on the bottom of the screen that says, breaking news, Michael Jordan returned to pro basketball, playing for the Wizards. The phone started to ring. We started bringing in salespeople who worked all night long. September 11th, the next day, the Trade Center got hit and everything stopped. And we went from euphoria to just total sadness. And so you really, in this industry, you really can't prepare for every bad thing that might happen, a pandemic, an attack. But it's all about, Abe Pollin was an incredible leader. David Stern was the commissioner at the time. And you just start working and you start thinking about how you can get back, how you can keep your fans safe. You know, there were players that actually spoke out about not wanting to play in a big arena. They thought they were a target. There was a great deal of discussion about the fact that Michael's first game was going to be played in Madison Square Garden. That's where they wanted to bring the Wizards. They wanted it to be a big event. And there was a great deal of security that went into that. We worried about how long it would take fans to get in. But you make it happen and you adjust. And I think America has an amazing reset button. And it didn't take long before the arenas were full again. People thought, oh, people won't go to the All-Star game. They won't go to the Super Bowl. It was packed.
So you're Adam Silver, Gary Bettman. What are you thinking you want to do in the next 2 weeks?
You know, if I was Gary Bettman, and this will come back because I'm being too honest here, thinking it's just the three of us talking at high time, but I would do everything I could to be the first league back, because we're starving for live sports. They're probably not at the same tier as the NFL and the NBA. And if they were first out, they would get eyes on the screen just because we're so, I mean, I know people that have watched The Last Dance episode 1 and 2 like 9 times just because it's something to watch. So that's what I would do if I was Gary Bettman. I would start the playoffs. Maybe I'd sequester the Western team in Vegas and the Eastern Conference someplace else. And I just start creating television content. That's what I'd do.
What about the NBA and Adam?
Well, I think he's a genius. So he doesn't need my advice or counsel, and I'm sure they'll come back strong. I anticipate that they're doing the phasing. I mean, obviously, if the facilities are starting to open, they're starting to think about playing again, because they wouldn't open them now if they weren't going to play again. Right. That's my thinking.
Danny, anything you would add? You sat in the president's seat too. What the NFL team presidents and owners, what do you think they're going through?
Well, first of all, I think the NFL made a great decision to go with the draft, and they executed it beautifully, virtually. Really a fantastic job, because that was not easy to do with all the moving parts. But there was a lot of pressure on the NFL to move it. And I thought they made a great decision to just stay true to the draft. They had instincts that America was, like Susan said, starving for something live, and the ratings were off the charts. So, you know, everybody's dealing with pretty much the same issues. How can we return safely? I was talking with Bill Sutton, our friend, and Bill said every team needs a Dr. Fauci. I mean, so every team needs somebody that's going to make the decision that's external from a public health standpoint, that it's safe. So what are you doing? Well, the first thing you've got to do is you got to take care of your own employees. So when are you going to bring those back? And are you going to stagger them? And how are you going to clean? And are you going to have, you're going to see people not only cleaning at nights, but there's going to be more constant cleaning during the day for your own staff. Are you going to put plexiglass up if you've got all the open offices? So there's so many issues that you got to deal with there. And then from a stadium standpoint, the indoor facilities much different than the outdoor. So how about the quality of air that's you've got coming in? How are you going to stagger fans? Are you going to bring them in like some of the things the Dolphins talking about? Everybody will have a time to come into the game. You're going to exit like church, where you have certain rows or sections that exit. So I think that the bottom line, Bill Hancock probably said it well. Nobody's really got any answers right now. Everybody's playing scenarios. From a college football standpoint, the key date's July 25. If you get to play, everybody says you got to have 6 weeks to get back. Well, if everybody's back by, if the players are practicing on July 25, then you'll meet the opening of the Labor Day weekend. If they're not, you push back. So how far do you push back? Do you just do conference games? Do you move it all to the spring? If you move it all to the spring, then you've got NFL draft issues. Now, how about all the elite players? Are they going to play? So my guess from a college standpoint is they're going to try to buy as much time as you can to make a better decision. Likely sometime into June, July 1 to July 15. You know, we got some good news today with the reports that you got UFC coming back. You've got the soccer in Germany. You got NASCAR that's around the corner, going to be in Darlington and then in Charlotte and so forth. So we're starting to get some good news and people phasing in and getting back to practice.
Susan, you and Danny are on the front line with college students, and you're at the University of South Carolina, a very big program, but you have friends and relatives who have kids. So you're talking to a lot of kids who, beginning of March, were super excited. They were going into one of the best job markets in history, and then the rug got pulled out. Tell us a little bit about that week, the following week, and then let's fast forward as we've gone through this process. I know you have coached these kids on how to respond and how to act and invest their time and what they might do. But have you seen some creative approaches by the kids, some stories that you think were uplifting that you would like to share?
You know, I think it's like Danny talked about the hospitality business. Everything that has to do with a live event. We also have the privilege to teach with a guy named Paul Graham, whose wife works for Live Nation, and he was the tour manager for Hootie and the Blowfish. So I've talked to him a number of times about the concert business and how the bottom fell out of that. And so every industry has a story like this. And, you know, I have a young man that's an honor student that drove to Minnesota to start his internship. He went to work, went to HR, and the next day he shows up and they said, sorry. And he drove back to St. Louis after he thought he had everything set for him. I don't think at this point in time, there's a quick answer for these young people. They just have to stay positive. They're talented young people. So and nothing's going to happen to diminish that. And so as these teams come back, I've talked to a couple of teams, the Nuggets, you know, they're looking at maybe June, returning some of the front office people. So I think we will start to see some things percolate this summer, and these kids will have another opportunity.
How are you keeping them positive? And are you seeing most of them are positive?
You know, I think they go through a roller coaster of emotions. I think there's a good amount that have had some down days. And then some of them just feel like, I want to make the best use of this. I know a couple of folks who are from the South Carolina thing that just said, you know what, I got a lot of free time. I'm just going to go up to the food bank and work. And I just thought, well, that's a great use of your time. One, what a wonderful reflection of you as a person. And two, what a nice story to tell when it is time to get back out there. Here's how I use my time. So I'd encourage everybody to think about that. Some way to give back.
Danny?
Well, first of all, the University of South Carolina and Matt and the department did a great job of communicating with everybody. That's part of the battle, is communication. Yeah. I'd echo what Susan said. You do the best you can with the students. There's a lot of disappointment on some of the internships that are in jeopardy right now. I had a number of Chinese students in one of my class, and obviously they can't go home. So they're staying in Columbia. And so you think about the difficulties that they may be going through now. I will tell you a good story though. Raleigh Ann Gray, you may not know that name, but she's terrific. I met her. When we were playing out in California, we were going to be, when I was with the Panthers, that we were going to play in Seattle the very next week. So we just stayed out there. So I took it as an opportunity to go learn more about technology. So I went to Twitter and I met Raleigh Ann Gray, and she is terrific. And so I had a chance to meet her. She showed me all around Twitter, met with the CFO at the time, Anthony Noto, who had been with the NFL, so I already knew him. And they were going to be live streaming an NFL game. That's when they were doing that on a Thursday night. So I got to see the inner workings of that. Well, Raleigh Ann's back in Charlotte now. And so she works with Wasserman, and she has also must love sports. So she said, I'm going to help these young people that don't have internships, because I got my start with an internship at ESPN. So any young people that don't have internships on this call, she's doing a virtual internship program that's going to be fabulous. 10-week program this summer, and Must Love Sports / Summer Session, I believe, is the right place to go. But if you don't have an internship, this might be a great virtual one for young people.
Well, I can tell we need to get you to go to work for Raleigh Ann, and we're going to have to get Raleigh Ann on here to talk about this program so that people can sign up for it. I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. We had students from all over join this call, so I hope that you'll use the question and answer, not only if you're University of South Carolina proud alumni or student or teacher, but if you're wherever you are, there's a lot of schools out there doing great things, and this is one of those times where I'll pretty much help anybody from any school except one. And so we want to help you, and I think it's great that somebody like Raleigh Ann, Danny, Susan, and all these people are here for you. And if I was a student, that's where I would go. I would be trying to get 15 minutes with as many people as I can and learn as much as I can from the people who've had the jobs and been on the front lines. So thanks for sharing that story. And we'll make it a note to find Raleigh Ann and get her out here to.
Raleigh's on the call right now. She's tweeted out, hey to Danny, and she sounds like she's in.
Susan, you just closed the deal, so thanks. Appreciate it.
I'm Danny's wingman. I'm kind of his wingman.
So Sean Gleason did some interesting things when PBR opened up. What did you two think about that?
I'll let you go, Danny.
I'll let you go.
Oh, the bull riding is not your.
I'll come behind you.
I'm having a senior moment. I read so much today about the Dolphins coming back, and
right.
Give me a different.
Remember, he set up workforces in groups of 10, not to intersect or interact with others. Just those were kind of things we never thought of, or I'd never seen. I thought that was very progressive, and hopefully it's working. You may know of others. The Dolphins got a lot of attention yesterday.
Well, Danny, I don't want to be redundant with Danny on the Dolphin thing, but yeah, I think everybody's trying to find their way and trying to figure out what system works, what keeps the players, the fans. There's a lot of stakeholders. I talked to David Aldridge the other day, and I said, what do you think's not going to change? What do you think's going to change? And he said, I think the media's going to have a lot less access. They're not going to let us in the locker rooms anymore. There's not going to be the casual stand by the side of the court and try to get a guy engaged in a casual conversation. So I think it's going to be very controlled and a lot more limited. So it's all these stakeholders you have to start thinking about. And clearly those guys at PBR did a great job thinking about the workers, but there's a lot of stakeholders to think about.
Yeah, and I think they were very smart. It goes back to Susan's point about NHL getting on. Well, this was a great opportunity. There's been more discussion about bull riding in the last several weeks than probably in the last year. That's not a negative, it's just reality. The other thing I think they did well is they stayed true to their brand, cowboy mentality. So you got this cowboy mentality. They're kind of the first ones out there, and let's go. So thought they did a nice job.
Susan, any other advice to people? And again, realize what you're talking about stakeholders. We've got a lot of different people. I've seen the names flashing from city government to race teams, universities, NBA, NHL attorneys. What would you offer that you think can be helpful to them as we hopefully are getting towards at least the part where everybody gets to go back to work? What would you say, hey, these are some things before you go back to work that can benefit you?
You know, I think a couple of things. Just like Kellogg, Danny's awesome example about Kellogg, how they used the opportunity and thought differently. I think if you're an employee or a sponsor or whatever, this isn't the time to roll up in a ball and sit in the corner and wait to see how it works out. Be great in some lane and figure out how you can help. We had, and I'm sure, and Danny lived through it also, we had strikes in sports. We had long lockouts in the NHL where fans got used to not coming and we had to figure out how to get them back. We had sponsors that decided to use the lockout to be innovative, to stay connected to the fans. It's not the time to sit in the corner and wait to see how it works out. Be in the industry, be in the forefront. PBR, first one out. Okay, great. Sponsor, be one of the first ones out. Employees, figure out how you can add value to your organization. Don't sit back, differentiate yourself in whatever category you're in. And it's a kind of an awesome time to be at the forefront because nobody knows the answer. So basically you're not wrong.
Exactly. And then I would say the other thing, we all want the miracle drug. We all want the miracle vaccine, but we've also made we have to remember we made a lot of progress in the last 6 or 7 weeks. You just think about how much better hygiene, people are washing their hands, people are practicing social distance, those are in jeopardy or wearing masks, people are cleaning more regularly. You got the subway system in New York City that's never shut down to clean. Now they're cleaning from 1 o'clock or 5 o'clock till 5 o'clock in the morning. That's a big positive. They opened up the restaurants here in in Charleston on Monday. So we go to just to outside dining. So we go to outside dining, and I was so impressed with how it was handled. It was beautifully handled. Everything was spaced out. Everybody was respectful. They did everything at the table from the order to the paying with your credit card. Fantastic. Then we rode back by Isle of Palms on our way back to Sullivan's. And we went by the bar there that was opening. They weren't so responsible. It was packed just like it would have been a year ago. I'm sure they've done some things to correct that now. But, solutions don't always come with some mega something. Solutions really come with a lot of small incremental steps. It's a really good thing for us to remember in the business world too. Most changes come small, day by day, year by year, and then you look back over a 3 or 4 year period and you find out, wow, we had monumental change without the drama. So we're making progress. We just got to stay diligent.
Anything else, Susan, you'd like to add on that?
No, I thought, as always, I thought Dr. Morrison was a genius. Thought it was great.
Yeah, good answer.
Thank you.
So, Danny, I've seen a couple of things pop up on the screen about college football. Hit the crystal ball. and know that you're not going to be held accountable by most, but by a few of us you will be. When are we playing, and what does it look like in the stadium?
Well, I mean, the reality is anybody that thinks they have the crystal ball is wrong. You just don't know. But here's what I'm hearing from the folks I'm talking with. There has to be some critical mass to be able to play. What's that number? Is it 70%, 75%? But let's say there's 49 states ready to play and one not. Well, I think they're going to play football. So if there's 70 to 75% of the schools, what are there, 130 Division I schools, 1A schools. So 70, 75% of them are ready, people will likely to play. You can't play if the venue's not safe. As simple as that. It also seems to be a prevailing theme that if universities aren't in session, it's not likely that you're going to have football. Now, what we've heard in the last several days is a number of institutions and colleges and universities are announcing that they are going to be open. Obviously, that could change if the scenarios change, but it's important well, let's just say this about sports. Sports actually have always been a diversion. What was interesting about this spring is that sports went from being a diversion to actually led the way about the seriousness of this coronavirus. The NBA shutting down, all of that led the way. So the question is, will sports help lead us out of all of this too? So the colleges and universities and conference commissioners are spending an enormous amount of time looking at the different scenarios. I have a lot of respect for how they're able to operate. There's a lot of pressure on them, but they're high quality people. AD's high quality. They're not going to do anything that puts any people's health and safety in jeopardy. So that's the prevailing dominant factor.
So we're going to take a little bit of a left turn here and ask you to be a college athletic director right now has got to be one of the most challenging jobs. And now you layer in COVID and then name and likeness and the ruling recently. What do you see happening with name and likeness and its impact on college football in the short term and in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I'd probably be contrarian. I really worry about name, image, and likeness. It's such a slippery slope. I liked what Bubba Cunningham said the other day. We're moving more and more to a pro model versus a collegiate model. And I love pro sports and I love college sports. But I think if college sports become more pro-like, a good brand's distinctive, relevant, people know about you and they hold you in high esteem. If you become a commodity and you become more pro-like, then there's nothing to differentiate you from the pro model. And as a result, pro model's going to trump you. So I really worry about the slippery slope on the name, image, and likeness.
You know, I think I'm going to weigh in. And I could be completely wrong, and I understand that because I tip my hat to Danny and his college experience. I don't think it's going to be that big a deal because I don't think that many people are going to be sought after for name and likeness. I mean, you can name 5 guys that Zion Williamson, people would have climbed all over to get him to endorse. But if you think of some college programs, there aren't a lot of names, you know, so you're going to have that one maybe at each college sport or 2 but it's not going to run that deep. And now as these programs like the NBA started this G League to pay these guys $500,000, and there's talk about, you know, creating another league where the guy pays $1 million for him. And those big name guys may just skip that name and likeness college stop and just jump to the pros. And so I don't know how big it's going to be.
Well,
So I rarely disagree with Lassus, but this is going to be an occasion because from the seat of my teammates here at Bespoke, I kind of think there's going to be the national celebrities like the Zion Williamsons, Tua, some of those type players. But I also think there are going to be regional opportunities. And I think there'll be regional stars, primarily from the money-making sports, that will get regional opportunities. And then I see what I call local and social opportunities. You get the best 1,000 women golfers in this country talking about a product. I think that could be powerful, whether they're Boise State or Coastal Carolina. So I don't know the revenue models yet, but I think there will be revenue opportunities. So we'll have a side wager, and loser is going to be buying game changers together.
Yeah, I'm not uncomfortable with that bet at all, because I don't think I really count the local deal where a guy gets to drive a car while he's at college for use of his likeness. I don't consider that a big deal. Do I think there could be some recruitment issues where the guy on the bank wants to help the football team, so they say to him, hey, he's going to pick our school or their school. Do you think we could shove a sponsorship deal that way? Maybe that happens, but no, I don't think there's many national deals out there.
I actually agree with both of you, because
Way to go, Danny. I mean,
Yeah.
you are so rock solid when it comes to this. Hey, listen, who's ever watching, take a lesson from this guy right here.
I do agree with both of you, because in a pure world, Susan's absolutely right. There won't be but a handful that would qualify. However, I don't think we're living in a pure world. And I think where Mike goes has legs too. So also what I don't, everybody gets all upset about the basketball players going pro out of high school. Well, baseball players been doing that nobody complains about baseball players going pro. So I don't really understand if a handful want to go pro, go to the G League, and it works for those. Again, to me, college athletics needs to be pure to college athletics. Differentiate yourself. If a student doesn't want the college athletes, wants to go pros, they're doing it in baseball, been doing it for what, 70, 80 years, and it seems to be working well. I actually like the baseball rule where if you go to college, you're going to be there 3 years. And if you want to go pro, fine. So any rate. Oh, I had a question. Susan should talk about, because it's really fascinating, her mentorship with Abe Poland.
Please.
Could you repeat that question? I had a dog barking.
Oh, talk about your relationship, mentorship with Abe Poland.
Oh, you know, I think that that's a good topic, mentorship period, because it's a great opportunity now in your free time to try and find a mentor. Some are obviously busy, but you know, Abe was life-changing for me. I learned so many things from him. Everything small to big. One thing he taught me, I'm a very emotional, passionate person. If you know me at all, right? That Irish flame. And he always said to me, you got to keep your eye on the ball, right? I would get caught up in something. I'd get so emotional about something would have happened in a negotiation, and I'd get mad that he didn't react. And he'd go, has nothing to do with it. Keep your eye on the ball. And even now in everyday life, I think about that. I think, don't get caught up in all this. Keep your eye on the ball. So he was an amazing mentor, and it would be a good time for people to sort of reach out and tell people who made a difference in their life, thank you.
All right, before we get the last question, I'll ask you a book or something you've read that you think would be beneficial to the group, that it's worth their time.
I guess I always recommend the same book, which is a couple of years old, which is Boys in the Boat. I just think if you got time, that it's a worthwhile read. It's a great read about sports, a great read about teamwork and individual discipline.
Danny?
I've got, and people that know me, I talk about this book way too much, but it's Reframing Organizations by Bowman and Deal. It's a great book. It talks about how these 4 lenses, seeing it through these lenses, seeing it through these frames, they come into play everything that you do. It's the structure frame. What's the structure like? Human resource frame. What's the people like? The political frame. What's the politics? And then the symbolic frame. So it's really a good book. I'll tell you another book that's, I don't know how many it sold, but I love the acronym from this one book. It was Seth Davis's book. And what he did is he went and interviewed all the great coaches. And so he came up with this acronym. What do they all have in common? And it's a pretty good lesson for all of us. What they all have in common is what he calls peak, P-E-A-K, peak. 1, P is the persistence. So they all grind it. And then these kind of times you just hang in there and keep grinding. And then I love the second one, the E. The E is empathy. Another good lesson in these times. You better be caring about people. And then the third one is my favorite, the A, authentic. Be who you are. Don't try to be somebody else. There are all kinds of different styles and different ways of doing things. One's not right, one's not wrong. It's just when you're not trying to be yourself is when problems arise. And then the K was for, you got to know your stuff. So those would be 2 pretty good ones.
Those are great. John Cho, you want to come in, and I'm sure the audience has some great questions.
Yep. Just as a reminder to everybody, in case you joined us a little late, we're going to take questions through the Q&A function down at the bottom. So if you're typing questions in the chat, I can't see those. So just do me a favor and type them in the Q&A and we will ask them for you. So first one we got here, what positive changes do you anticipate will come out of the cancellation and postponement of sports? Susan, you want to go first?
Could you repeat the question? Sorry, there was I think somebody leaving the message meeting, so the ding interrupted your question.
What positive changes do you anticipate will come out of all of this?
You know, I think that we have an appreciation for a different industry of people, doctors and nurses and teachers. I mean, I've always held Hollywood stars and athletes at a certain level, and all of a sudden this kind of, I always like to say, you know, got our hat on straight, and we started to appreciate professions that maybe for a long time have been underappreciated.
Love it.
Amen. And we're going to have a new normal. If there's one thing that came out of, I think there's a lot more respect for the customer now. You're finding people are extending deadlines for season tickets. The empathy word comes into play. So we're just going to have a new normal. And I love the word forward fumble. A lot of times you have a bad situation, but if you jump on the ball 5 yards down the field, it's a forward fumble. So we're going to have good lessons out of this. We're going to be in a much cleaner environment. People are going to take care. This will have long-term effects, and maybe so this new normal could be positive, and that's the way we need to look at it.
Next one, how do you bring back large groups of sports fans under one roof and have everyone feel safe? Danny, why don't you just, I mean, you've got a couple fairly large events coming up. What are some of the things that you guys are talking about doing?
Well, in talking with all the stadium folks, what's the answer? If you scaled it and said, okay, we got to have social distancing, and you have a 70-some thousand seat facility, does that mean 10,000? And then do you try to bring increments of 5,000 more? So that's going to be really complicated how you scale things. And how running the algorithms, I'm sure Ticketmaster and so forth, they're all working through how you could do that. But say you got your family of 4, you've been living together the whole time. So now are you going to go to the games and not sit together? So there are just so many issues out there. And when is it economically viable? Let's say you've got a 75,000 seat stadium, and you could have 10,000 in there, and they've got to be spread out all over. Is that really going to create the kind of atmosphere? And does it warrant opening a facility for that? So I don't know what the critical mass number is, but seems to me there's some critical mass that would you would need to open a facility.
Susan, how about you? What advice would you be offering teams or events and how to make people feel safe when they come back?
I think Danny makes a good point. You got the economics. It might just be that for a while you're just creating content. You're just creating, it's a television production. I said for a long time, the last 2 great gathering places in America were sports and churches, because everything else we've been doing online. We shop online, we grocery shop online, we bank online, we date online. Everybody does everything online. And the only thing that brought us together were sports and church. And now that's been taken away from us. And until we figure out a safe way to make the masses back together again, I'm not certain that we're really not just looking at television production facilities.
And people are going stir crazy. People want to be around people. I read somewhere where it's like your normal daily contact, you're interacting with at least 16 people. Well, so all of a sudden you're not having that kind of interaction. That's difficult. So I think people are really missing that.
So just worked. Somebody asked, did you find your old bike? Is that an inside joke that I don't
Thank you, Tom. I bought a new one.
What do you think the likelihood is that NFL games will be played without fans? Is there any likelihood of that at all? Or do you think it'll be, if you had to just guess, what do you think we're looking at?
I think Susan said it well. Content is king. And if that's the only way you can play NFL games and you can have safety for the players and the support people that have to be there, and you can play the games, that will be well received from a television audience. So yes, I think they would play with no fans.
So talk about, this is just kind of my aside, talk about, you guys are both presidents of franchises. It's not as simple as just saying we're not going to have fans and continuing to pay everybody the same amount of money. I mean, what are some of the different steps that teams and leagues are going to have to go through from a CBA standpoint, from just paying athletes and expenses? Like, what are some of the things that are going to have to be restructured in order to play in front of 0 fans?
Well, clearly you're looking at a large revenue stream that just went out, for basketball related revenue in the CBA. You just took tickets off the table. And your sponsors are affected because you've got a lot of sponsorships that have signs hanging in arenas. And I don't know that the 16 guys on an NBA team are enough of an audience to hang a sign for. So you've got a lot of revenue streams that are going to be affected. But, the good news is that there's everybody climbing all over each other for content. And as we add everything from Disney Plus channel to Amazon Prime, they're all looking for content. And so the value of these appointment television shows is going to go through the roof. So does it make up for the other revenue streams? I don't know. But it certainly is going to increase that revenue stream. So I guess that would be my comment when it comes to that, paying people.
And it'll have effect the following year. Because when you do the math, there's usually a formula. Okay, here's the revenue for the previous year dictates what the salary cap will be the following year. So not only does it impact this year, but it'll have a domino effect into the following year.
And I think the other thing you have to think about is you really don't, we found this with the hockey lockout and the NBA lockout. When they go a certain amount of time, fans get used to not going. You know, the beer is a lot cheaper at your house than it is at an arena. And television productions become amazing. That I love watching football on TV now. I'm, 5 feet tall, and people stand in an NFL game. I don't get to see much of it. So it's a lot easier to watch it on TV. And if you get out of that habit, you got to figure out how to get the fans back into that habit. I don't miss paying $400 for a ticket and $16 a beer and having to leave my house at 9 for a 1 o'clock game. And you have to worry about that also.
Susan, have you bought your Tampa Bay Buccaneer season tickets yet?
Oh, I'm so excited about Tom Brady. I did see that he has trademarked Tampa Bay and Tampa Brady. So if you had any idea about that, you've missed out.
Darn.
Tampa Brady is going to be a big one. Thank you guys very much for being here. We're just a couple quick things before we turn this off and say goodbye to everybody. If you missed the beginning of the call, we're going to do these. We're now doing them every Thursday. So we've got in the next 3 weeks lined up. Our friends at MarketCast are going to provide some data on fandom amid COVID-19. Scott Warfield from NASCAR is going to talk about the iRacing NASCAR partnership, and Mark Dyer is going to discuss college ticket sales, sponsorship sales. We're also on Tuesday at 2 o'clock, every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. We've got this great woman named Kristen Hemstra, who's been helping out people who are looking for jobs. So it's purely a job seekers forum. It's a normal call, so it's not a webinar like this, like you're actually able to ask questions, get personal advice from her. So thank you to everybody for joining us. Again, thank you to our guests for being here. We appreciate you putting on a button-up shirt and hopping on here with us for a little while.
Thank you both. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We enjoyed it. Thanks for having us.
Very much. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
All I wanna do is